Hey, good morning, everybody. Law and Legitimacy. It's birthday, yeah. And I've got one last court appearance before I go on vacation. But I will come. We will be with you while I'm on vacation. It's a little dispute about a struggle over a gun. Somebody ended up dead. My client gets charged with murder. Murder is the specific intent to cause the death of another person and then causing that death, in this case by means of the firearm. But here's the question. In that muddled mess of a struggle over the gun, can anybody really say who pulled the trigger? So that's what we'll be exploring today, just in case you were wondering what ray of sunshine would befall me today. In the meantime, the jury is out in the sex assault case. We gave closing arguments yesterday. Very promising notes at the day's end. One of my associates will be monitoring the jury today, and I am extremely confident that we will get a not guilty charge as to the top count. There's a misdemeanor count that is in play right now. We'll report back on that soon. I noted the irony last night, after two significant losses in the Jones case, the hearing and damages, and the Proud Boys case, the haters are, you're a loser. I'm like, God, I'm winning this one. And like, where's the press now? Where are the haters? But, the good news is you don't get to be the man in the ring unless you've got a lot of things in your background. People don't call you unless there's a track record. And there is. So there it is. So, what is Elon Musk talking about with XAI? I mean, I'm transfixed by the possibilities of artificial intelligence. I'm feeling burned and betrayed by the limitations of ChatGPT. I'm watching Elon and Zuckerberg arm wrestle over Thread and Twitter. And so I see XAI. Is this a challenge to ChatGPT? What is it exactly?
So XAI, I'll pull up the what's on the screen. Well, first I'll pull up the tweet that raised my attention yesterday. I think I sent it to you as soon as
you did, but I couldn't figure out what it meant.
Right, and that's exactly what you said to me. Which, by the way, speaking of Twitter, follow at LawPod Daily on Twitter. At 500 followers, Norm and I are going to do something special for a few of our loyal viewers, and we'll say more about that in the coming week. But if you're on Twitter, follow at LawPod Daily, please, and share. Once we reach 500 followers, we're going to do something special for you guys. So back to Elon. So he tweets yesterday, quote, announcing formation of XAI to understand reality. And that caught my attention for a couple of reasons, but I'd never, heretofore, I have not seen anybody refer to artificial intelligence, large learning models, generative AI from the perspective of trying to understand human reality in a way that says that we ourselves don't necessarily understand it that well, right? But that seems to be the truth. I think that you and I agree, Norm, that understanding reality is a tale as old as time. It is what historically thinkers have toiled over. What is the meaning of life? What does it mean to exist? I think, therefore I am, etc. The foundations of our civilized society and what led to the Enlightenment. But it's interesting to say from his perspective that he's announcing some group devoted to artificial intelligence with a specific view to, quote, understand reality. So that caught my attention. I sent it to him.
Well, as it catches mine. I mean, we've talked before about artificial intelligence and the nature of intelligence, and we've sort of skirted a broader discussion of reality itself. And so, and Jason's all wound up. He wants to hear more about this. Good morning, Jason. So we'll do it. And he says, it's always murder with me. No, Jason, I don't try just murder.
Justin, it's Justin. Yeah.
Justin, look, excuse me. I'm tired.
Always murder
Justin, it's not always murder with me, Justin. I mean, sometimes I'll venture into other pleasant aspects of the human experience, bank robbery, child abuse, sexual assault. So it's not always murder. You're just wrong. But I still love you. But reality, AI, AI, in the end, these become metaphysical and theological questions. What is a physical question? A physical question is, can I account for the fact that when I take these sticky pads and drop them, they fall and make a thud? And yeah, that's physics. Can I account for the effect that I give an account of that, or that I have a need to give an account of that? That's metaphysics. In other words, what principles, what non-physical principles, what principles above the physical reality that we observe make it possible for us to make observations about physical reality? How do we determine what to rely on? What standards do we use for evaluating the world around us? And then more to the point of the other questions that Mike, raised. There is the grand philosophic question of all. Why is there a world rather than not? And the hard-headed realists among philosophers will say, why ask that question? It's a question that can't be answered. And as Wittgenstein pointed out, what we can't answer, we best should remain silent about. But yet the human breast cries out for a sense of meaning. I go no further than the first page of Augustine's Confessions in these discussions every time. My heart will know no rest until it finds its rest in thee, Augustine writes in his intimate confession, talking about God. So we have the human condition. We have a quest for meaning, a quest for significance. We live in a world with others, and we live in a world with physical objects. And our objective is to turn the objects in our world to our use and to our benefit while living together with others. I mean, in the end, that's really what life is all about. And everything else is just a footnote on those questions. And so the question becomes, can artificial intelligence contribute in a meaningful way to that discussion? And I think Elon is suggesting it can. Let's see if he can deliver. And so let's talk.
May I refine that a little bit? What I understand about this is that he's saying that our pursuit of the development of AI will, not that it can, but that it absolutely will, and that there is a corresponding obligation upon humanity to understand the inputs so that we don't get negative outputs, or that we at least put together a framework where innovation can still thrive, but that we don't blow ourselves off the face of the earth.
Well, it's two questions. In one part, Elon is promising that a dedication to AI will reflect or will reveal the nature of reality in ways that we can't in our own naked introspection, or in the relying upon our own raw human intelligence. That's an article of faith, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Then he's got the prudential ethical warning, and that is, we've launched this new technology on the world, and we need to assure that that technology doesn't rebound to our detriment. We have to make sure that as that technology becomes more seemingly independent, that it remains aligned with our values and doesn't turn against us. So you've got an article of faith and a prudential concern, both revolving around a conceit that Elon can't answer. And this is an open question to Elon. Elon, do you genuinely believe that human consciousness is simply a function of complexity? And if you do, how much computing power will it take to create a human, an AI that's capable of having the sense of longing that Augustine had in the Confessions? And I don't see anything, zero, in the AI research that I'm looking at. And I'm no scholar, but I mean, I read what I can. We talk to whoever will listen to us, and with whoever will come to talk with us. I don't see anything that suggests that AI is capable of longing. And, each of us has a certain sense of what it means to be ourself. And that's largely indefinable, but you know it. You know when you're feeling off kilter. That's a metaphor that we use. We know when you're not feeling up to par, or whatever that is. You recognize it in your friends when they don't bring to the interaction with you the customary robust sense of themselves that you normally have. And so we call those characteristics personality. We call those characteristics personhoods. Philosophers might call them a sense of self. And so being human means having insight into your sense of self and accepting your sense of self. Living in a healthy society is one in which there is common regard for one another's sense of self, and autonomy sufficient for each person to develop that without overbearing control by others. The history of political philosophy can be written in those terms. Do we have a community in which there is an equal opportunity for a sense of flourishing? Are some privileged over others? Do some people view others as means to their ends and deny their autonomy and validity? These are questions that come up again and again and again. So I think I don't know the answer to this question, obviously, about whether a computer can develop a sense of self and develop a sense of longing. And I accept the notion that for materialists, those who believe that the world is simply matter and motion, the human mind is an epiphenomena that can be explained simply by complexity. I get that, but it's not been replicated yet. And so my question for Elon is, how much computing power will it take to get to that point? And when will we get to that level of computing power? And, it may be that the answer is never. That there is something fundamentally unique about the human brain and the vast number of neurons and synapses, the billions of synapses that it takes to conceive of even the simplest notion, to have that vague introspective notion that today I feel well, today I am all myself and nothing more. But even when you say that, the psychoanalysts and the Freudians teach us that even when you're most aware of most or all of yourself, there's a vast hidden terrain of unconscious desires that propel you, that drive you. And thus the psychoanalytic project is identifying those drives and their relationship to our consciousness. I don't see AI having unconscious drives. And so what accounts for human singularity, the singularity of humankind as regards others? That may be a theological question. And, I realize that talking theology, somebody's saying, Norm likes Augustine or something. Yeah, photography. Yeah, I do photography. I've been aware of Augustine's works for almost 40 years and returned to them periodically. Never read them all, but read most of them. And I think that he gives the most profound and most complete account of human existence and experience of any writer whom I have read. And his thought circles around the concept of grace and being created in the image of God, with a sense of longing that can only be satisfied in the acceptance of grace in a world that is broken by sin. And that whatever grace we experience is transitory and momentary, because we are ego-driven material in the end, ego-driven things, and will always foul our nest and will perpetually and forever be in need of grace. And we will never arrive at our destination, because there is no destination to arrive at in a broken world. There is just the trip. There is just the journey. And the journey is one that requires the eyes of faith to avoid self-destruction. I don't see anybody in the AI community accounting for that. I don't see anybody in the AI community talking about the need for grace. I see the AI community as a reflection of the sin of pride, that we can say, the pot can say to the potter, why makest me thus? I can make a better version of myself. And in the desire to build the perfect man through AI, what we're likely to do is build an idol that destroys us. And that moves us to the second preoccupation of Musk's, which I share. And that is the problem of alignment. Big data. I mean, Henry Kissinger and a couple other guys wrote a pretty good book.
And before you go on, this is exactly why he hosted a Spaces last night. And Twitter Spaces, I'll throw it on the screen just briefly here. So it was about 12 hours ago. Future of AI with Elon Musk, a gentleman named Ro Khanna, who his profile says a vision for a new economic patriotism, which I think is a really interesting combination of words, we'll call it. And then Mike Gallagher, who is a very small following, but he is campaigning for Wisconsin's 8th district, right? The three of them did this about an hour-long Spaces. And what you're getting to now, Norm, the discussion around alignment was the dominant theme within that Spaces. And in particular, alignment of sovereign nations around the globe. And that's why I asked on the screen here, and China, because China is something that Elon is a country that Elon has economic investments and interests in, right? And he speaks glowingly of the people and the spirit there, right? But he acknowledges that there are problems geopolitically, right? With it, with our relationship with China and their relationship with other parts of the world. So, but we know from experience here in America that China has long been a thief of intellectual property in large measure, right? We also know that the foundational principles of China's governance structure is categorically opposite to that of the United States. That is, the individual as the sovereign, right? Self governing, and China flips that on its head. So there is the question of that morality. I think that you're seeking when you're quoting Saint Augustine, right? When we're talking,
maybe for all, and Elon Musk is like several magnitudes of genius away from any intelligence I possess, and I'm not going to pretend to occupy the same space he does. But when I watch Musk and I labor over AI, I feel that he's being either dishonest or dishonest, in other words, keeping from us what he really wants, or ignorant, and that is unaware of what he really wants. Because the notion that we can create a artificial intelligence universe, a network, as it were, such that it can arrive at reasonable conclusions about human flourishing and how best to distribute scarce resources, carries within it a totalitarian vision. And to the degree that China is one step ahead of the rest of us, China is the future. And China and big tech have more in common than not. And what they have in common is a dedication to the use of big data to, as Musk puts it, understand reality. But my contention is that in a universe of spirits, in a spiritual universe, in a universe where our origins will forever remain opaque and mysterious, and that we're asked to respond in faith to the unknown and to embrace the grace that we find, or the grace that finds us, at least in my case. Nothing good ever happened to me that I generated myself. Anything good I've stumbled into and learned to accept the gifts that have been given to me. I think that what Musk doesn't, one day Elon Musk is going to wake up and he's going to say, you know what? I am the deep state. You know what? I do embrace China. You know what? I really do like the World Economic Forum. You know what? When I understand reality, my understanding of reality will be such that when I can get AI aligned with it, everybody will be happier. And I think at that very moment, we're all expected to bow to an invisible God, and we're all expected to be grateful for the world that it gives us, but we will have lost the one and only thing that makes life living, a sense of personal responsibility and a sense of gratitude for what limited resources we can bring to the infinite sets of problems that define our lives, and the humility and love that we're beckoned and that we're summoned to share with one another to create communities to deal with that uncertainty. AI denatures the world. AI dehumanizes the world. It does so because it creates in us a false sense of security. We can have the answers. The invisible hand becomes visible in the form of the products of big data. And we're told if we but trust, we can be happy. But if we trust in another, are we ever happy? Isn't that the very definition of potentially of tyranny? Isn't that the very definition of something like slavery? I really don't want to trust in another. I want to learn to get by the best I can with the people I love and cherish, including you, Mike. And including the listeners that we're developing relationships with here. I don't want to be told that the key to a good life is to do A, B, C, and D in the following order. That's Orwell's vision of 1984, where the screen that's watching you summons you to do just the right exercises in the morning, and you're chastised if you don't. Yeah. What explains, I think, world tension and global and domestic politics right now is a populist revolt to the emergence of a universe that is controlled impersonally.
It seems
by
to be
AI, by big tech, by China.
Exactly, and it's a neutralizing force. I think what we're coalescing around right now, Norm, is so photography said, great. Let's see. he said, science sheds humility, Augustine embraces it. And what I was thinking about before that comment was made was that it's a tragedy that most of us will never know the boundaries of our physical and mental and spiritual and emotional faculties, right? And it does appear as though the more that we lean into technology for the convenience in our day-to-day lives, and we make these subtle sacrifices of our own autonomy for the convenience and efficiency of data and tech and et cetera, that we just push ourselves further from the discovery of the likes of St. Augustine and Cicero, right? Immanuel Kant, these things. And because of that, we as a race are distancing ourselves from personal agency and the realization of what the true sacrifice is in favor of artificial intelligence. That's the way
I think that's right. And I think that Elon, I'm suddenly becoming suspicious of Elon. I was like entranced by him for a while and thrilled when he took over Twitter and promised, free speech and so forth. But to the degree, and I'm relieved that he sees the alignment problem as critical with AI. But if he thinks that AI is going to give us a superior understanding of reality, I think he's missing the larger point. And I'm calling you out, Elon. You want to have an open spaces discussion about the meaning of AI? Let's get it on. I want to introduce you to St. Augustine, and I want to introduce you to humility. And I want to introduce you into being a creature, not a creator. And I want to introduce you to accepting the limitations of what can be done. Because, I'm not saying don't anybody leap to the conclusion that you can draw here. I don't think the founders created the American Republic to reflect Augustinian values, but I think it happens that the very inefficiency that's baked in to the American collective experience in the form of federalism, in the form of separation of power, in the form of checks and balances, assures us of the right to err and the ability to be inefficient. But for those rights, we would lose our sense of efficacy and agency. And I would rather make my own mistake and die trying to be good than get an extra decade or two of life out of obeying somebody's program that's even, in fact, objectively speaking, better for me.
Yeah, the true problem here is that the prospect of AI seems tethered almost inextricably from the notion that we will liquidate individuality in the process.
Yeah. Right? Well, that seems to be the danger. So I don't want to do the whole thing here on AI.
With this more, well, like I'll keep tracking on this, and actually the chat is going nuts today on YouTube and on Rumble. This is the sort of the foundational, one of the foundational, the cornerstones of this podcast and these live streams is thinking through this part of our lives, right? There's the law stuff that we do. That's sort of the practical applications of talent stacks and skill sets and licensures, right? But law, the architecture of law is built atop something, especially in the West, right? And this is something, Norm, that I think we are obligated to continue coming back to. And it just so happens that the emergence of Elon Musk in the conversation of artificial intelligence provides us with the perfect opportunity to start hearkening back to the original thesis of law and legitimacy. Some of the first things you ever said on this podcast, you've said today again. And I love that about what we're doing.
Well, either that or, in fact, I'm a Johnny One Note and keep returning to the same thing. It does seem to me that the fundamental questions are, to my mind, at least, and I remind people, Immanuel Kant, great 18th century German Enlightenment philosopher, once said the two things filled him with wonder: the starry heavens above. You look up at the heavens and you think, oh my God, we are just a speck within this infinite sea of stuff. How did this happen? How do I account for it? What is my significance in this? That fills him with wonder, as it should. And the other thing is, when you look in, when you look out, you see these infinite depths and ranges, and you're in awe. When you look in, Kant says you should equally be in awe, because we have certain ideas: God, freedom, immortality, self-respect. Where do these come from? We can't fully give an account of them, but we all experience them, and we accept them, and we heed them, and we avoid heeding them at our peril. We avoid heeding them at becoming caricatures to one another and to ourselves. I would say there's a third thing that fills me with wonder, and that's the fact of collective experience. the fact of government, the fact that we live in a society that is built on interdependent and trust-laden relationships with strangers, and that it works. That as I drove, when I put my Thomas's Promises English muffin in the toaster today, the toaster toasted it to my satisfaction. I took it out. I put margarine on that came from the store and a little bit of jelly on, and I ate it, and I didn't die. And I knew what to expect. That to me is a miracle. And it's a miracle that it can be produced, that it can be produced and safely delivered, that it can be produced and safely delivered to people in ways that keep us from rioting. And so there are these fundamental questions, these mysteries about the human life, and how we live it, that we are required to give a philosophic account of. And the temptation in AI, I think, is to trust others too much. And we see that trust betrayed. I was telling you before we went online, Mike, when I saw the announcing XAI, the first thing that came to my mind was my enormous sense of betrayal by ChatGPT. That we have this artificial intelligence device that routinely gets ordinary facts wrong when we ask it questions. And yet, and why do I have the sense of betrayal? Because I have the instinct to trust, and I want to trust. And at some level, I want to trust and obey, as it were. And I think we all have that. And I worry that by giving that level of trust to an opaque technology, what we're really doing is trusting the designer of the opaque methodology and the algorithm and the algorithmic priorities that are reflected therein. And in this case, it would be big tech, Davos, the World Economic Forum, and others who would be setting agendas for us and telling us how best we should live. And that I actually think 95% of the population is going to go along with it, even if it's leading them off a cliff, even if it's leading them to be spiritually vacuous, even if it's leading them to dull their pain and their sorrow and their loss of significance with opioids, fentanyls, drugs, rock and roll, and all the other distractions that keep us from doing the one and only thing that is really necessary in life. And that is accepting our limitations with a sense of gratitude and finding institutions that make it possible for as many people as possible to share a sense of significance in the communities in which we live. And really, to be honest with you, Mike, that's this podcast in a nutshell. Everything we do revolves around that core philosophic commitment.
Well, I cannot unsee this theme as it is manifested through the likes of one Andrew Tate and his influence on young men. And I'm being very serious about that. And we can talk about, I don't know that we have enough time.
Let's talk about Tate, because you opened my eyes. I confess to everybody here, I find the experience of living to be perpetually drowned by the fire hose through which I am sipping. And so, each morning, Mike and I decide what we're going to talk on. And I'm like overwhelmed by everything that I don't know. So I've been seeing Andrew Tate's name online for a while without having any idea who he was. And so Tate sits down for an interview with Tucker Carlson the other day, and Mike sent it to me, and I listened to about an hour of it yesterday on my way to court. And here's what I learned about Andrew Tate: the phenomenal kickboxer, athlete, a man recognized around the world for the excellence he brought to that sport, who has turned a corner and leveraged this into a sort of, I don't want to call it lifestyle coach or guru, but a spokesman for excellence as he experiences it. And his view is that there are masculine virtues and that they are good in and of themselves, and that by living them, you can live a good life. And that one of the masculine virtues is the ability to say no when you see nonsense. And that a lot of what is going on in the world in woke culture and whatnot is to eliminate a sense of defiance in a certain part of the population, males, in order to accomplish objectives that may or may not be consistent with human flourishing. And so now Tate, who lives in Romania, that is apparently independently wealthy, is being prosecuted by the Romanian government on sex trafficking charges. And the charges are preposterous. You should watch this interview, if for no other reason, to see how a well-counseled client deals with the media. It's not a mystery that Andrew Tate says repeatedly, I didn't need money. I didn't need pennies from TikTok by being a good, and I didn't recruit women by being a good and kind man. I got nothing from this. All the women that were involved said the charges are ridiculous. He repeated that any number of times, and he may be right. Now he and Tucker say, well, maybe he's being targeted because he's a threat to the emerging sense of obedience that is being fostered by big tech, and but I would say by the AI worshiping community, wherein we're being habituated to obedience, and we want to be in a situation where when the algorithm says move left, we all move left without asking. When the algorithm says move right, we move right without asking. So the digital universe,
yeah,
1 0 1
what I
0.
was saying earlier, right, about the loss of agency and the sacrifice of that of a well-intended life, right?
So Tate stands up for human, in this case, masculine agency, and I'm not entirely persuaded by him. He looks like a more sophisticated version of what Mike Cernovich was doing with his juicer books and whatnot years ago. But yet I'm enthralled by the discussion.
Well, and so if for those who have not indulged, you may bring views of Andrew Tate to this stream, and I'm not ignorant of that. He is a very controversial figure, valid or not, right? That we just acknowledge that there is an extreme polarity to how society views Tate. But this interview is 2 hours and 20 minutes long, thereabout. And in just the first half of that interview, you're getting the themes of due process and systems of justice, right? He talks about how in Romania, the system of justice affords the government the ability to detain someone for up to 6 months before even bringing.
Yeah, I know. Isn't that something?
Right?
Wow.
It's amazing when you can contrast that with our notion of due process, right? And innocent until proven guilty. There's also sort of you've already talked about the nature of the pending charges. He talks about the lover boy method.
Lover boy. I couldn't remember that. Yeah.
They're alleging.
So if you're too nice to women and they listen to you, you might be a lover boy. That's another way of saying you might be grooming them. While you're only gratuitously nice to a person if you want something from them, if you're going to exploit them. So don't beware the lover boy.
Discussion of prison conditions, and then in particular his acknowledgement that there's a huge void in the mental health resources available in Romania in particular, in that part of the world. He was saying that the prison experience for him was multiplied in a negative fashion because of the random screams and the obvious detachment from reality of many of the people who were in there, because prison is where the mentally incapable are stashed away rather than given the support that they might need. He talks repeatedly about the matrix, as it were. I thought a very funny part of this interview was Tucker Carlson admitting that given his dyslexia, that he doesn't really indulge television, right? Or
that he's never seen the movie. I didn't feel so bad for my vast regions of illiteracy. I thought, man, Tucker had
like the whole red pill, blue pill paradigm may in fact be lost on someone as prominent as Tucker Carlson. I thought that was really interesting. Tate talks about the marriage of mainstream media and global influences, namely global governments and systems of justice, and how those can align to create the conditions that he is now subjected to. And he even talks in the interview about if it wasn't Romania, he feels confident that it would have been anywhere that he was at the time, right? He's also a dual citizen, right? He's a subject of the United Kingdom, and he's also an American citizen living in Romania. He talks about what did I say earlier about the masculine essence? But he talks a lot about the programmed nature of modern depression. And I love this part of the discussion. This is what many of my friends and I connect on, Norm, is this innate understanding. And this is through athletics too, right? This is through the team-oriented sort of battle-ready dynamics of being on a team and competing to win, to be victorious. And there is an innate amount of suffering within that, right? And he talks about the duty of a man to move on and to serve his obligations and his responsibilities, despite the way that he might be feeling about things, right? And the importance of that in one's ability to overcome things that...
Well, I sure understand that. Every trial lawyer knows what it's like to wake up with a sense of dread and wonder how you're going to get through the day. And then you just walk out the door and do it. I mean, I have notebooks from all the trials I've done. And when I die, somebody will look in the left-hand column and wonder what all the numbers are. When I walk into a courtroom, if it's 10 o'clock and we're going to be there till 5, I know that's 7 hours of potential agony or 420 minutes. And as the day goes by, and the minutes tick away, I keep track of them because I remind myself again and again, no matter how difficult the situation is, I'm only asked to endure it for another 259 minutes. No matter how tortuous, another 182. And then as you get near the end, I'm only an hour from home.
He talks also about the migrant crises and the malaise of the Western middle class, right, affecting places like the UK, London in particular, and even here in the United States. And that's something that you and I have talked about, Norm. We wanted to talk about the Netherlands and the Prime Minister's resignation.
We'll get to it.
There. But I think that that's interesting that the migrant crises are referenced, and he's recognizing the inherent masculinity of the populations that are being imported, in contrast to the declining agency of those who represent the middle class and the culture of the countries to which these migrants have fled, right? And the problems in the future from that. And it's certainly something that Tucker Carlson has talked about before as well and is interested in. He also talks about just stoicism, traditional stoicism, the male tendency to bond through suffering, which I was talking about earlier, various tiers of government corruption, accountability for self, and then he even gets at racism between lower classes and makes the observation that racism and division seems to evaporate at a certain level of wealth, and points to that being a really interesting feature of how our society is organized, that the lower classes and more impoverished populations are led to look at each other and blame each other for their own problems. But those same tensions don't exist at higher levels. It's almost as if they are purely cosmetic distinctions. So I love it. We also learned that his dad was in the CIA.
Yeah, I know, that was pretty interesting. Yeah. And he was forced out for reasons that Tate would not discuss. I thought that was pretty interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So I know we're going over our time here, and we did promise a J6 Thursday. Let's give a quick preview because I think that we should at least get to that, Norm.
Yeah. So lots going on in J6 land overnight. The Justice Department has filed a notice of intent to appeal the sentences in the Oath Keepers trial. And that's a chilling notice. They haven't promised that they will file it, but they needed to preserve the right to do so. You'll recall that they asked for 25 years for Stewart Rhodes and got 18. They may go to the appellate court and say, we didn't get enough time. And so, this is a signal from the Justice Department that there's a lot more fighting to come. We had another unusual event last night. Yesterday, there was an acquittal by an actor who did his own trial pro se in front of a judge. And when I say pro se, he represented himself. And he was acquitted of seditious conspiracy. Here it is, James Beeks, who I guess was playing, Judas in Jesus Christ Superstar at the time of his arrest. And he basically told the judge, there isn't enough evidence to say that I was a co-conspirator. And the judge agreed. And so, the benefits of a court trial are apparent here. A disciplined fact finder may do things that a DC jury wouldn't have the nerve to do. So congratulations to James Beeks. Most significantly and most interesting, Ray Epps is suing Fox for defamation. Now, he's contending that he's been defamed by being identified as a potential potential Fed, and now the Feds are going to be prosecuting him. The suit raises infinitely interesting possibilities. Are we now going to be getting access to Justice Department files to show whether he was or was not a federal agent? As you know, Ray Epps
on the screen is just wild to read, right?
Read it out loud. I can't quite see that far.
So paragraph 94 of his complaint. This is a defamation lawsuit against Fox News, and in alleging these facts, he says, finally, in May 2023, the Department of Justice notified Epps that it would seek to charge him criminally for events on January 6, 2021. 2.5 years later, the relentless attacks by Fox and Mr. Carlson and the resulting political pressure likely resulted in the criminal charges.
That is one of the most unusual paragraphs I've ever read in a federal complaint. You're going to blame Fox for getting charged for being on Capitol grounds when everybody else who was on Capitol grounds and was similarly situated got charged. Good luck with that, Raybo. I mean, the Ray Epps story is fascinating. There were colleagues of mine in the Proud Boys trial were more interested in Epps than I was. But we did note the following, and it was very interesting. The Justice Department always took the position that it could never confirm nor deny whether someone was a confidential informant. That's the position they took with us. But during the Proud Boys trial, the Justice Department broke that tradition and asserted he was not a confidential human source. And so why the special treatment for Ray Epps? Welcome to the scrum, Ray. We look forward to following this case in court. You've got some splaining to do, and so does the Justice Department. So Pat Clifton says, I need a hobby. Why do you say that, Pat? And what hobby do you recommend? My hobby is engagement with the world, because I find it such a fascinating place. And talking about what I see with you guys, I need something better to do than that? I don't think so.
That's the OAD. That's the other angry dog.
All right.
His hobby, Uncle Pat, is talking to me every morning. Come on.
Yeah. Now. So give me a break, Uncle. Is he really your uncle?
Not really, but still, he's still.
It's the South. Who can tell, right? Your mama's not talking, but my daddy, he's walking.
Law Pod Daily on Twitter. Please follow at 500. We're going to do something special. Go over there, follow us. If you don't have a Twitter account, create one just to follow us. You know what I mean? What do you have to lose? It's not like it's Facebook or LinkedIn where your data is going to get hacked and you'll have no recourse as, foreign actors, subscribe you to ad campaigns and, use fraudulent credit cards and all that kind of stuff, right? There's no risk of that on Twitter, only on those other platforms. So if you're on Facebook, why aren't you on Twitter? I don't understand. Anyway, we are here every morning, 8 a.m., Monday through Friday. You can find us on Rumble Video, which has been really underwhelming lately. They're apparently going to get a permanent stream key. Maybe that'll help something. I'm not optimistic. You can also find us on Twitter Live / Periscope and YouTube. And all the comments you see on the screen, they have the red YouTube logo. That's those of you who are joining on YouTube. And I have to admit, I am enjoying more and more the experience with YouTube. Subscribers continue to climb there. View counts are lower than anywhere, over on Rumble. But the engagement we receive and the ability for us to cultivate these conversations and keep things moving is driven in large part by YouTube. So for the time being, I know the big tech censors and blah, 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 blah. But, I don't have anything negative to say beyond the early strikes that we got on the channel, one of which was overturned on appeal. Anyway, if you can't catch us live or for whatever reason, like Justin today, he couldn't stay past the half-hour mark. If you want to catch what's remaining through audio, we're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, Audible, etc., wherever podcasts are found. So, Norm, I know you're optimistic about what the day holds for you and your client. So I'll let you get back to that, and then we look forward to streaming from your vacation spot. I'm looking forward to you being a little more.
Hey, we're back in New Haven tomorrow, though, so we'll see you all tomorrow morning at 8:30. Bring your questions. We might even have a few answers, and if we don't, we'll still find something to talk about. I mean, 8 o'clock. Yeah, come at 8 o'clock. I didn't mean to say 8:30. That was Elon Musk's microchip activating a misfire in my mind in the service of globalism. See you all tomorrow at 8.
Yeah, thank you everybody for being here. See you tomorrow.